My hat! Hello, welcome. So I've been having some fun with the TRX4M and MT. Now these portions here, they are sped up 8 times simply because I don't want to go through the entire build. This video is long enough. But I am going to show some part numbers. I'm going to show the difference in decibels for the metal gears. So if you switch the transmission gears for the metal gears, whether you're overdriving or underdriving, I do have that. I tested bearings to see if there was a speed difference in them as well, and just my opinion on parts. And little thing, I think the TRX4M is my new favorite out of the two, surprisingly. These are the parts going into the MT, so TRX4MT. Yes, the brass is interchangeable, you can use it, except for one piece which I did not use here. These are the gears I'm putting into the M. So I'm underdriving the M, I'm overdriving the MT. The MT is more fun when overdrived. The M is more fun when underdrived, in my opinion. So you don't have to remove the entire thing, but because I was working with the links, I did in order to get to the transmission. And that part, that bottom plate that holds the transmission to the chassis, that's the only thing that's not interchangeable between the M and the MT as far as brass components that I have found, because the MT uses a slightly longer plate. The front part's a little longer. That's the reason why. But if you're looking at the hubs, steering, all of that is interchangeable. They're the same axles. They use the same exact axles. The only difference is there's a different mount to mount the two shocks on the MT, but you can remove that and put it on the M as well. But depending on the upgrades you want to do, for example, bearings, you're going to have to take apart the entire thing. So if you're planning on doing gears, you might as well. And yes, the metal gears are noisier, but they're not as noisy as one would think. And bearings, I didn't really find a speed difference, probably because these things are so small and so slow to begin with, compared to a touring car where, or the, for example, Euro truck, where bearings do make a difference in speed. Here, you're just going to notice it might be a little smoother in some situations. That's about it. But really, as far as more speed, I didn't really find anything other than, like I said, it being a little smoother. As far as the added weight from the brass on the MT, so on the monster truck, it was awesome. It's amazing. This thing needs brass. And the reason why is, well, both of them. When you're going over rocks or hitting things, the impact doesn't bounce the truck around as much as it would without the brass because of the added weight. So it's definitely a plus to get the brass. I would invest on the brass on the MT. Now the bearings are lighter than the bushings, so you are going to lose about 3 grams overall. The bearings are going to be about 9 grams, as you're going to see shortly, versus the brass bushings are going to be about 12 grams. That's something to keep in mind. So would I do all of this again? Yes, I would. I would do the overdrive gears on the MT. I would do all the brass components that I showed you, pretty much everything. And then on the M, I did go with the brass as well because I like the brass. I like how it handles. And I already had the brass on it. And I would also go with the underdrive. And to be honest, I think I'm getting the whole crawler thing going. And the reason why I say it is because I'm getting a little more excited to drive it. I actually really like the M now that it's slower. And I know that seems really weird, but I'm finding that slow is fun. And I'm contemplating even changing out the differentials and making it a little slower because of the amount of torque and control at those low speeds. Plus, I was surprised how it could hold on a really steep incline. So toward the end, I'm going to put it on a rock. Now, here is the M before the bearings. Notice I do have the brass, but the purpose for this image is really the torque. So notice how the body torques as I accelerate. And to be honest, when I swap out the bearings, you're going to see shortly, I don't really see a difference. So bearings or no bearings doesn't really make much of a difference. And one of the things that many of you have probably noticed if you have already purchased these vehicles is on the rear, one side of the shocks, they actually have the clips in there to increase the what am I thinking? Not the spring rate, just add more force. Compress the spring a little more, put more compression into the spring to try to prevent that torque swing. But then again, keep in mind I am going full throttle on carpet, so this is high traction, let's just say, compared to some other surfaces where one might drive a vehicle, and one would probably not accelerate as fast. Now, if you're going slow, yeah, you're probably going to notice a difference, but where I'm going with this is bearings are really good to have. I would upgrade these all over again because I did and I like them. I just like ball bearings in general compared to bushings. But don't expect it to be night and day. You're still going to get some of the torque on the body when you accelerate. Notice when I stop and I go in reverse how the body will also twist here on the front end. You can notice it. But it's definitely something that I would upgrade. Now, I was actually surprised after driving them because the MT I thought was my favorite out of the two until I went with the lower gears. Now the MT, I'll be honest, I like with the, oh, that's the plate that I was talking about. That's not interchangeable in the bottom. I really like that brass weight, and I think that brass weight is overlooked. And the reason why is it makes the suspension work. Adding that weight will always be in the center of the axles, regardless of whether you're going uphill or downhill. So it will always help the vehicle not flip over and keep it quite stable. And I actually prefer that weight over some of the other brass in the vehicle. But unfortunately, they don't make one for the MT because it's a different size. But keep that in mind. And this thing, going back to this thing is slow. And I like it. It's really fun. But with the brass, it doesn't bounce around as much. So one of the things that I think is out of the box, I think the M for a crawler is just too fast. And the transmitter, a problem that I'm going to have later on at the end, where I'm running the vehicle next to a ruler trying to go slow. That way you can pause and calculate the speed, because my device couldn't calculate the speed because it's too slow. But the vehicle is just fun to go on rocks, and it doesn't bounce as much as it did, especially the MT. The MT is the one I was just amazed with how much more control it has with the weights as before I had the weights on there. But the MT, I will say, is more fun, faster than it is slower. And I am going to show you the actual speeds in a bit between the two. But here I'm just having fun going back and forth, trying to see how this thing handles when I go hard on throttle for what it is. But the transmitter, not the best in the world, but I'm going to leave it. So this one originally, when I did my test, if you watch my original video, did about 6 kilometers per hour. Sometimes it would do 7. And this is before the, so that was before the gear swap that it would do about 7-6 miles per hour. Even with the brass, all the brass, which added quite a bit of weight, it still does 6-7 kilometers per hour. So the top speed is about the same. The motor isn't getting bogged down. If I had raced this with another one that I have, which is perfectly stock, I just didn't have somebody to race it with or hold the camera or anything. Because my wife is no longer my cameraman, unfortunately. She's got like mom duties or something. Excuses. No, I'm kidding. But maybe it's a little slower on acceleration. I didn't really get to test it. But again, still, about 6-7 kilometers per hour. 6 is pretty consistent, 7 once in a while. But when you do the overdrive, supposedly it's a 70% overdrive. If I remember correctly on the package, it said on the package in that picture. I managed to get 10 kilometers per hour. So I was quite happy, because that's about 50% more speed, which I thought was great. And I ran an entire pack. The motor didn't care. Then again, it was a very cool day. As you can see, it was raining. This is why it took me so long, because I was waiting for the rain. It was supposed to rain tonight, not in the morning, but the weather decided not to cooperate. So right now it's drizzling a little. I generally don't like getting my RCs wet, but I was desperate. But here we go. And notice, so notice real quick with the brass how it's going to handle a little better. Despite me flipping it, I'm going to flip it once in a while. That's because right now I'm driving one-handed, so I can try to hold to the camera, which isn't really working very well. I need to figure out another system. To be honest, I just need to buy that holder that attaches to the TX, so I can just put the phone on there. But I really like the way it drives with the brass. Before the brass, it would just bounce over, even more than that. Now it's a little more controllable, even with one hand. But here we go. Speed. You're going to notice now all the brass and the links. I forgot about the stainless steel links. So those are there. Those are all. So if you go into Inyora's website, these are all parts advertised to fit a TRX4M. They fit the MT. It's the same thing. Like I said, it's just that plate in the center that holds the transmission and the links that is different. It's a different length, so that's not going to help, which is a bummer. But 10 kilometers per hour on something this small is actually pretty fun, and because it's a little quicker and this is higher off the ground, it gives it a more realistic feel. And you also have to be a lot more careful when driving, because it's pretty easy to go on the two side wheels. Then you have to use the steering to control it so you don't flip the vehicle over. But it's nice going over rough terrain. It looks pretty cool, especially with the brass. Like I said, it doesn't bounce around like it used to. That's just driver error again, driving with one hand. I'm not sure. I don't really think I would want portal axles for this one. Maybe I'll get portal axles for the M. Maybe I'll just get another M. But honestly, sometimes, sometimes I wonder if it's really the M is good with the upgrades that I showed. But if one's gonna go wild and crazy and start upgrading electronics, chassis, whatever, might as well build one from scratch, I'll be honest. There's no point in buying one and upgrading, because at the end, you're gonna end up with parts to almost build a whole other vehicle. So that's something to consider. Now, both of these trucks have the stock brushed motor, the 180. But maybe I'll do the Traxxas brushless. I'm just curious what the Traxxas brushless would do. I know there's other options out there, but I want to keep the electronics Traxxas for the purpose of this. But here we go, over some rocks here and there, and it does a pretty good job. I still have that GPS unit in the back. The interesting thing about that GPS unit is the M was going so slow that it would not record it after I swapped the gears. Now this one is going faster, so there's no issue. But I'm having quite a lot of fun driving this, and my daughter, she's not very good with the transmitter. It's way too big for her hands. She's almost 3, will be 3 soon. She loves these trucks, and that made me real happy, because I'm gonna have a somebody to play with and have fun. The only problem is I got her a Fortec for Christmas. Now I'm telling my wife, it's like, I don't know what to do. It's like, maybe I should trade the Fortec and get something else, because I really do love Fortecs. But honestly, given what we have around the house, an M would make more sense. She loves the M. The M's the one she was trying to drive, just crashing, hitting walls. So that's something else to keep in mind. What it is that you're doing, the space that you have. For me, I love touring cars. Touring cars are awesome. But this would make more sense, especially if I'm going to the park, because they go about walking speed. Now, to swap out the gears, it's pretty easy. You just need to remove the 2 for the battery holder, get that out of the way, and then there's 4 screws that hold the transmission in, and and then once you do that, there's going to be 4 more screws that are going to hold the case together. You remove those, and then the gears just come out. And then there's 2 screws that hold the motor. And then you remove that, and you're going to have to swap a gear. And you don't actually have to swap the gear because the gear is a plastic 11 tooth, and the one that comes with the gear kit is an 11 metal gear. So you could leave the other one, but that might be your weak point. So you should consider using the metal one. And it's not that difficult to get in. You just need, well, a hammer. You need a hammer and then something to sit the motor on so that you don't damage the shaft as you're hitting it. I just ended up using a flathead screwdriver, as I will show in a bit. But again, it's not that difficult. And that previous part was sped up 4 times, but this is how I set the hammer, the screwdriver, so the motor on the screwdriver, and then I just used a hammer and I was tapping it in. Just make sure you get it, you sit it straight and you just tap softly initially, don't go wild and crazy. But that's what's sitting on the hammer. Just make sure that your wires and capacitors are out of the way. And don't forget to use silicone grease for all your gears. You probably saw the little tube there. I'm just using Traxxas silicone grease. But here we go, decibels. Now really quick, the decibels are going to seem very, very high, but that's because I have the motor and transmission right next to the microphone. From afar, it would not be that loud. This is how loud it would be if you put it right next to your ear. Realistically, you're not going to do that. But the point that I wanted to make with this is the following. With the metal gears, speed matters a lot because those gears, the teeth are hitting each other, and that's what's creating the noise. So the faster they hit each other in general, all of them, the more noise they're going to produce. So if we look at the transmission with the plastic gears, the noise levels are going to be, say, about 85 decibels. And with the metal gears, these are the high speed that I put in the MT. We're looking at about 90, say 95 to 100. Sometimes I can actually hit 100. So it's twice as loud, a little over twice as loud. So you saw an 87, somewhere around there. But there's the 100. So this is the metal gears. The first one was the M with the plastic gears. Then it was the MT with the metal gears, high speed. Now the next one, this is going to be the M with the underdrive gears. So notice that even though they're metal gears, because overall it's not as fast, it's about as loud as it was before. But the pitch does change. So that's something that you're going to notice. When it comes to being loud, the underdrive gears are really not any louder than the stock plastic gears, really. But the pitch is different, just because of the different materials, the plastic versus the metal. But the high-speed gears, those do get loud. But it doesn't really bother me, to be honest, because again, this would be equivalent to holding it right next to your ear. I'm not holding this right next to my ear. I'm going to be listening to this from afar. But you will notice a pitch difference. And trying to run this MT with the brass and the gears is really fun. And like I said, I've already spoiled it. It does 10 kilometers per hour as it is now. And one of the reasons why I'm curious, there we go, 10 kilometers per hour. One of the reasons why I'm really curious about the Traxxas brushless system is that one is over 3000 kV, so just over 3000 kV. I want to say it's 3300, but I could be wrong. And it should work flawlessly with the transmitters, transmitter and everything. That's the reason why I'm kind of curious. Are there stronger, torquier, faster systems? Oh, yes, of course. Depends on what you're looking for. I mean, Injora, for example, makes a few options, brushed and brushless. Here we go, 10 kilometers per hour on this one. And just driving, so here I'm just driving it. I really like it. I like the speed. The only thing, because these have say, locked differentials, front and rear, especially the front. When you're turning, if it's a high grip situation, you can see where it sort of grips and locks up a little, and you're going to see it twist even more because it wants to free up that inside front wheel. But when you're on surfaces like this, it's really, really fun. You just have to mind your turns and your speed a little more, which I did not because I'm driving one-handed for now. I need to get that little lever that goes on the steering wheel. One of the things that I did notice is say goodbye to wheelies. It's very difficult to do wheelies. The only way you can do a wheelie is if you go in reverse. See the shut-off kicks in? The only way you can do wheelies is if you go fast enough in reverse, stop, and I have done it. But then if you stop fast enough, so you have enough traction on your tires to just stop and have the whole truck wheelie and then hit the bumper, so it releases some of the grip on the tires so it's easier on the motor, and then you can actually wheelie. So when you do the high-speed gears, it's going to be geared too high for your motor to work properly. And if you have the low-speed gears, it's going to be going too slow for it to wheelie. And this is the M with the low gear. So this is the underdrive. If I remember correctly, it's underdrive by just over 50%. And this entire time I was thinking that my GPS wasn't working. This is the same Sky RC that I use for almost everything. So what I ended up doing is I just want to take it off, and I'm just going to walk with it. And when I walk, and I'm not even going to walk that fast, as you're going to see shortly in the video, it's going to register 4 kilometers per hour. So this thing is going less than 4 kilometers per hour. But like I said, for some reason, as of now, I've gotten, like, I've really developed a pleasure for driving slow. Maybe I'm hitting a midlife crisis or something. I mean, I'm not quite there yet, but that could be a possibility. I don't know, interests are changing. So this is where I walk, so notice how fast I walk. This is real time. And the fastest for this little section is 4 kilometers per hour, and it registers. So the truck is going less than 4 kilometers per hour. And the factory speed out of the box is about 5 kilometers if you've watched my other videos. But this is something that I really enjoyed. And I just enjoyed, these river rocks are too big for it, but I was just looking at how the suspension articulates, how real it looks. And I know it's just it's an RC, it's not a full-size vehicle. I'm not in it driving it. My back would probably hate me if I were in a vehicle doing this for sure. But just the look, seeing it go over the terrain, seeing the articulation of the suspension, I was just in awe with this thing, and it became my favorite. And even after doing some of these videos, while I was waiting to transfer and then doing some other things, I just charged another battery and did it again, and then just started messing around with it. And long ago, I had some videos about, you know, how slow can you go with the TRX4, the 1/10 scale. And I sort of started remembering how fun it can sometimes be to just go slow. Not necessarily because I'm going slow, but because I'm taking my time. I'm just enjoying time. And that might sound a little weird, but I think, going fast, I don't want to say going too fast, it gets old, but with my Fortec, that thing is fast. But there's only so many places I can use it, and every single time I have to be in this, just really alert, because it's dangerous to go fast with an RC. Versus this, I can just enjoy it. If it rolls over, I don't have to really worry about it breaking. And it's just interesting to try to go between the rocks and try to find an area where it can actually crawl. I don't want to compare this to a puzzle, but it's almost like a puzzle in a sense. And I don't mind flipping this over. Here I'm going to get the tires dirty. Usually I don't like water getting into my vehicles, but this big boulder right here in my front yard, I'm going to put the vehicle on it, and I was just surprised how the motor just holds because of the gearing. And I wish I had video before and after, but I'm not really sure. Well, it might be, see, so I'm trying to hold the camera horizontal with the ground so you can see how steep that boulder is. And I don't think I can convince my wife to put a crawler course in my front yard. I mean, it would be awesome, but no, that's not going to happen. Probably just going to have to build a foam one in my backyard, which would be awesome. But I mean, look at this thing. And those are the stock tires. So in my mind, I was just thinking, oh, what if I got some nice tires for this thing? That would be cool. But usually I run this thing around the house, so I am going to have to wash the tires. I did wash the tires after this, just so I could run it indoors. My daughter was running it. But notice how that's relatively steep. It's steeper than it looks here on the camera. Now here, I would just flip it. It would just flip because of the angle. I didn't take a shot on the other side. But going, a little adjustment, and there it goes. And it's up. A lot of it has to do with that brass. And again, that center plate, that brass plate that holds the transmission and the links, that is a must. Which is something that I did not do in my original video with the Land Cruiser, where I did the weight distribution, something I should have done. At the time, I don't remember if that was available or not. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But here's the truck next to that ruler. I will try to go slow, but it's a little tough with the stock electronics. And one-handed, for some reason, is harder to get a smoother throttle response. But this being said, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was informative, or at least entertaining. And I look forward to maybe upgrading that ring and pinion and making this thing a little torqueier and slower. We'll see how that goes. Well, that being said, again, I appreciate you watching. Please subscribe if you have not, and I'll catch you in the next one.
What? Oh, my hair! My car! My rod!